Hi everyone, welcome to tonight's talk. Tonight I'll be speaking to Surita Linde, a fellow long hauler who has been on a journey of recovery and is sharing her story tonight. Hi Surita, nice to connect with you.
Hey Chris, yeah, thanks for
Mm, mm,
organizing this.
I'd love you, just to start us off, I'd love you to dive into a bit of your health and fitness prior to the pandemic and to your COVID-19 infection, and just share a bit about that journey.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for creating the space to share about this. It's really cool what you're doing. But yeah, so I got tested positive in 2022 in February. So it was actually quite late in the whole, like if you think in terms of the pandemic, but prior to that, I lived quite a healthy and active lifestyle. Was doing like F45 or functional training 5 times a week, running, swimming, had just gotten into trail running a few months prior to that. So just love, like my friends as well, we just love the outdoors, being healthy and active. And during the COVID pandemic, I was quite involved on the ground with, as an essential worker. So I was, since the first lockdown that we had in South Africa in 2020, around March, I was doing food distribution, and we were packing parcels with a few nonprofits and running soup kitchens in Kayamandi in Stellenbosch. So I was, very much, or got a first-hand experience of just the effects of COVID and stuff. So very involved, and didn't just, I guess you can call it maybe ignorance or youth, I don't know, but didn't take it too seriously. The like virus itself, the effects of the pandemic, very serious, and saw the just I guess like the suffering of that. But I didn't get vaccinated or anything. We can chat about that a bit later. But when I got COVID in 2022, my colleague had actually just let me know that she got tested positive, and we were sharing an office. So I was like, oh, okay, Shem, that's fine. Like, so chilled. It'll probably just be a flu. And then initially, I got some flu-like symptoms, and it just got so bad. I had such a bad case of COVID, and I just remember a week into having like really intense symptoms that kept getting worse, I dragged myself out of bed, hopped in the car first thing, drove to the nearest rapid testing station, did a test, literally passed out on the sidewalk while I was waiting for my results. I had such high fever, and I was completely like, I shouldn't have been driving. But anyway, so and I got tested positive, went back to bed, and phoned my parents, who I wasn't living with them. So I just told them what was happening, and my mom came over about 3 days later to just come and help because my fever didn't want to break. So I don't have to go into the symptoms now and what I experienced, but it was super out of the blue, quite a shock to the system, especially experiencing it, or just being a bit ignorant towards the virus for 2 years. And then when it finally hit me hard, and it humbled me.
Wow. I can kind of relate to that in a sense where I knew the virus was serious, but I think I've spoken to this other people about it. It's like how I saw the pandemic as very black and white. Like either you get COVID and it's terrible and you're elderly and you might pass away, or you're younger and hopefully you healthy and fit and you're strong enough to fight it and you survive and then you carry on with life and that's it. But I don't think there was a space in my mind that thought, okay, this long-term or long COVID or like post-viral fatigue symptoms and all those kind of things existed. So tell me, how long did you know after your infection that, okay, cool, like you got better, but you feel like you're not the same, like you something's wrong? When did you know that?
So I actually went to see the doctor quite quickly after I got tested. So I got tested on the Friday, and I would say, my fever got worse over the weekend after I got tested. So my mom, she came on the Sunday to come and like help change my bedding, help with all those things. There was also a stomach virus going around in Cape Town that was quite severe. There were a few people who passed away from that. So we and the doctors suspect that I had the stomach virus at the same time, because it was just all the symptoms piled on top of each other. And about a week after my fever broke, or the week after I got tested, sorry, so a few days after my fever broke, I was lying in bed, still recovering. So I was pretty much in bed for a week after I got tested, couldn't move around. And I woke up from a really intense pain in my leg. And my whole leg, it was super intense. My whole leg just went numb, and I got really intense pins and needles. And I just know from reading everything, I was like, no, I do not want a blood clot. Like, that's what everyone's passing away from. And it was, quite an intense encounter, but I just like lay there, waited it out. And I remember I just started praying over my leg, and eventually the pins and needles died down a bit, and feeling returned to my leg. And after a few minutes, I phoned my mom and I told her, I was like, I think I just got a blood clot and my leg is in so much pain. And we waited a bit, and then we went to the hospital, to the Mediclinic, and immediately they did scans and tested for a blood clot. And in my chest as well, I had severe pain in my chest, but I knew that was typically, that was a typical symptom. Anyway, they tested and they couldn't actually find a blood clot. So I went back home, got back into bed, and another week went by where I still had this pain in my leg, and my leg started cramping. I got really bad spasms. Like, it would just go into spasm. And this just went on. Let's say I was at home for about 2 weeks. And obviously after that, you have to start like working again. So after 2 weeks, I started working again from home, from bed, but it was just pointless. Wasn't really effective, couldn't focus, had just intense, like wouldn't know what I'm doing, would forget what I was supposed to type out, had really like bad brain fog. And anyway, so I think 3 weeks after I got tested, I went to Dr. Loubser, Dr. Yaku Loubser, who you've been discussing on your podcast or on your videos, because my dad knows him. So my parents are from Stellenbosch, so they know about him and what he was doing. And my dad just said, go get a good opinion, go to this doctor, let him just do some tests and whatever. And I remember sitting there, and even as I was sitting there, I was just like still going into spasms and cramping, and I couldn't drive at that stage because I would, like, my arms would just completely lock up, and I would get these, like, you can see the cramp. It was so intense. Like, I had so many cramps across my body. And that's when Dr. Loubser told me about long COVID for the first time. And I was like, what? I Googled it. I had no idea that was even a thing. So that was early 2022. And he did my tests. It came back positive with all the microclotting. And he immediately put me on medication. And he was quite hopeful because I started medication probably then, 5 weeks after I got tested, because it took a while for him to get the results back and for the whole process to start rolling. So he was positive because a lot of patients only go on medication months after or after they've been struggling with it for months. So I was quite privileged in that sense that I could start medication early on. So I was quite hopeful. He was hopeful, even though there wasn't a lot of research done on it at that stage. So I was part of the trial. And then I think the first cycle of medication that I did was for 1 month, and then we did tests and we saw I reacted quite well to it. My clotting definitely decreased, got less. And then I went off of the medication because the side effects, it just was so unpleasant. I mean, you've experienced it as well. And I went off of it because I felt so hopeful. But it was a super long journey after that, still struggling with cramping and with spasms, and still struggling with memory loss and with fatigue. I would be driving to work. So I work for a nonprofit. So we're quite out and about visiting different nonprofits. And I remember a few instances where I turned around midway because I had no idea where I was going. I had no idea what was happening. And I would cramp in the car. So I would have to pull over, and then I'd be like, what's happening? I have no idea. And then I would just turn around, go back home, get into bed, and I would sleep for hours and hours. So that went on for months. So I kept using aspirin or Disprins, for months after I stopped with the medication. And then I had a follow-up with Yaku in August, and the clotting had come back. So it was definitely more than it was when I stopped with my medication. And then it got it flared up with having another virus. I think I just got the flu in August. A lot of people were having the flu. It was passing around, and obviously it spikes up when there's another virus in your body, and then it mutates and it multiplies. So then I went on medication again in August, but for a short period of time, for 2 weeks. And I actually really didn't want to go back on medication, just because your skin, your hair, your everything changes. So I thought I can maybe just walk this thing out over time. But yeah, it didn't really, it wasn't a quick fix.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for sharing, Surita. I've now been, I guess for listeners who don't know, Surita is one of the friends that I got to chat to. I mean, we've never actually met in person, but one of our mutual friends, Thuran, put us in touch, and because I was sharing with him about this long COVID thing and this fatigue that I'm suffering with, and I'm like, oh, there's this doctor called Dr. Laubscher. I don't know what the correct pronunciation is, but he's like, oh, you must actually, my friend has done this treatment with him. I was like, please, can I have her number just to chat to her and just to ask advice on it? And we had a cool call just before I started, I remember. But now I've been on it 10 months, and I totally relate. The symptoms are tough. They haven't been terrible for me, but it comes and goes. And on that note, I wanted to ask, did you ever get asked to test for spike protein antibodies in your blood at all?
Okay. No.
Yeah. I just wonder, because that's something Yaku asked me to do. I wasn't getting better as fast as he hoped I would. So at this 4 or 5 month mark, I was about to do my 6 month blood draw. And he's like, no, why aren't you exercising it? Why aren't you running? I should have been way further along. But I guess, unfortunately, I am one of the people who took a long time to figure out what was wrong. I just thought it was general fatigue or exhaustion for about 1.5 years. And then only about 1.5 years after I'd started having these symptoms, post-infection, I realized that this test existed for microclotting and platelet activation and things like that. So I wanted to take you back to the pandemic in terms of your feelings on the vaccine. And I guess it's quite controversial, because some people are very anti-vax, and some people are very no, do it. It's medical science. You can trust the government. What was your reason for not wanting to get a vaccine?
So it was purely based out of, I didn't feel there had been enough research done on the vaccine. It came out quite quickly after the pandemic broke out. And I just felt that, we had no idea what the long-term side effects of it could be. And as a female who's not started a family yet, these are just things that I'm mindful of. So I guess you could call me an anti-vaxxer, but my whole family got the vaccine. So it was never a political thing for me, or I know that it caused a lot of division. And I didn't think it's a microchip or anything, but I didn't fully know what the side effects would be. And I think I had hoped, because I'm young and healthy and active, that my body would be able to recover quite quickly if I were to get COVID. What was hard in that time when I got COVID, and when it hit me so severely, and when the side effects were so harsh, a lot of even in our family and people close to me in our community were saying it's because you didn't get the vaccine that you're struggling so much. And now there are a lot of people who are saying, I've read the comments even on your video, but you're struggling because you got the vaccine. So, there's so many opinions on it. And I think for me, it was just, I just told a lot of people who said that to me, I'm like, let's be kind to one another, just show empathy. People reacted so differently to this whole virus, and we couldn't have predicted how we would react. But just in terms of the vaccine, I was quite skeptical about it, and I still am. I think so many people were really pushed into a corner, and that made me skeptical. It wasn't even that it came out so quickly, it was the fact that it was driven with so much force, and that it had the ability to cause so much division. That made me skeptical of something. Then I'll just always question the ethics behind it. I don't know. So Dr. Loubser didn't say anything about the vaccine when he tested me. He said actually quite a lot of young people did suffer from long COVID, whether they were vaccinated or not. Quite healthy people, active people. I remember when I went back for my second round of testing, I was feeling super optimistic and hopeful. I'm in general quite an optimist, but I was sitting in the waiting room with two British guys. They were about 30 years old, and they had come all the way from England to see Dr. Loubser to be treated because they had been suffering from long COVID for a year. The one had been struggling for more than a year. Since 2020, he had been struggling, but it wasn't a term that was official in the UK yet. So they both got diagnosed with fibromyalgia, with depression, or they called it post-COVID depression. Shame. So they were just feeling super hopeless at that stage. And it was just, frustrating even to hear their stories and how it was just something that people weren't really acknowledging and taking seriously. And people were blaming not getting the vaccine or getting the vaccine. So it was interesting, even today, thinking about our call tonight, I've just been thinking back of the whole experience and what a crazy, crazy time that we've lived in and gone through.
I often think, man, what am I going to tell my kids one day? They made this virus, or they took it from some bat and they manipulated it in a lab, which I subscribe to that lab leak theory, at least right now. But and then we all got it spread around the world. It killed millions of people. And then we got all these long-term side effects and we're suffering for years. And kids are going to be like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. It sounds like something out of a science movie. Have you ever watched Planet of the Apes, where they make a virus to basically make the apes smarter, and then ends up infecting the humans by mistake and making them all not able to speak anymore? It's an incredible movie series, highly recommended. But it's just that it feels like it's something out of a fiction novel or movie or something. But I wanted to touch on that point that you mentioned. I totally relate to you with the narrative of vax versus anti-vax, and I think as far as I've kind of had a lot of time over the last 2 years in bed to process and think about it, and I feel very hurt often because a lot of people say, oh, it's the vaccine. Obviously, that's the thing. It has nothing to do with the virus. No, long COVID doesn't exist. It's long vax. And so people who are anti-vax will obviously subscribe to that narrative. But in the same way, I've also had people say to me, oh, you had the vaccine. Why did you get long COVID? That's weird. That should have protected you. And that'll be a more pro-vax narrative. And I feel like there is a tension where the virus is doing a lot of damage without vaccinations, and people are almost taking a viewpoint of whatever fits their narrative and whatever they believe about medicine and everything. I don't think the way the vaccine was handled was great. It was, like you say, there was this subtle pressure, lots of stuff on radio. I was listening, to radio stations, and there's lots about do the right thing, protect your grandma and the elderly, and it's safe and effective, and all that. And now we know it's not 100% safe and effective. We know it doesn't prevent transmission either. So yeah, I totally understand what you feel when it's a bit hurtful for people to immediately blame it, for your case, to say, oh, you didn't get vaccinated, we're all protected, we're good, and that's not true at all. A lot of people who are getting the vaccine are getting injuries, side effects, people that I've spoken to, and it's not to say that it's going to cause side effects to everyone, but I'm still figuring out what that percentage of the population is, but I don't think it's 100% safe and effective. And based on just like you say, this clotting physiology and the damage that the virus is doing, whatever that spike protein is doing in the blood with the clotting, the same thing is coming from the vaccine. So if you're susceptible to these microclots, to clotting issues like you shared, it's very, actually, I actually regret now getting the vaccines. I got 2 Pfizers, but I don't think I'll touch another booster or another vaccine for the rest of my life right now. And that's not to say all vaccines are bad. I think there is merit in, like, when I was a kid, I'm sure I had the chickenpox vaccine and a polio vaccine. You know, those things are important. And yeah, I think just, yeah, it's a difficult thing in terms of, you know, how the whole thing was, it turned into a very political thing. You know, oh, we're going to fire you from your job because you're not going to get vaccinated. But it's like, well, that's like a bit unethical, but it's like everyone's dying and there's all this fear and pressure. And it's just, it's weird how it feels like the whole world threw out any protocol, you know, to do with pandemics the minute it's actually happening. And this, everyone's just getting anxious and everything. Yeah. Sorry, I went on a bit of a ramble there, but I wanted to dive into what you mentioned about people being gaslit or mislabeled in the UK. And did you have any, I guess, effects of mental health, and how did you cope with those during your infection, yeah, or journey?
Yeah, so obviously one of the side effects of long COVID, because of, I mean, yeah, I don't know all the medical intricacies, but because of the lack of oxygen that passes through your blood, there are quite severe, like even neurological effects. There are many effects, but one of the things is also obviously depression, and you know, just with that, the brain fog and not feeling capable to do a normal thing like go to the shop, like all of those things, obviously it's got quite intense effects on your mental health. So that was hard, I think, because I'm you know, I'm quite used to being a very capable person. I'm super independent, or I used to be super independent. I would do all my things, I get things done. So I said earlier that I had quite a healthy and active lifestyle before I got COVID. But I guess in a sense, you know, I had a super busy lifestyle as well. And that's not always healthy. I think we label it as healthy. The more things you can do, the healthier you are. But looking back, I realized that I did operate with, you know, under a lot of internal stress. But so it was a very big, like a paradigm shift almost. Dealing with the effects of long COVID, feeling super depressed constantly, you know, not being able to think clearly. I actually had speech problems as well. One of the side effects, because my muscles got severely impacted. So with all the cramping, the spasms, I mean, even my speech, I was slurring, I was stuttering. So even that, it's a basic thing that we take for granted, is being able to communicate effectively. I couldn't communicate effectively. So I was really struggling with that. And then, you know, from a religious point of view, because you know, I'm a Christian, and so much, you know, that we read so much, like the joy of the Lord is our strength. That's one of my mantras in life, something that I live by, and is that the joy of the Lord is my strength. I want to be strengthened by his joy, and that joy is knowing, yeah, I don't want to make this super religious thing, but there's a joy that's core in our religion and in our beliefs with our relationship towards God. And then sort of, you know, believing that, but then you're struggling with all of this depression and with all of this just feeling of hopelessness and even isolation. You know, there's a lot of isolation with long COVID because there's lack of understanding, there's lack of empathy, because it was such a new thing as well, because it's such a abstract thing. It's not a, you know, you can't pinpoint all the, like, it's not a tangible thing. So a lot of people don't understand it. So it was quite an isolating experience for me. And I think, yeah, it was really a hard thing to navigate by myself. I think I withdrew a lot from people and from community because I just didn't have the capacity to deal with it, and didn't even have the capacity to, like, get out of bed and to be positive. I did not go on antidepressants. I tried some, like, natural remedies, I almost want to say. So obviously sleep is a big thing. So my insomnia was ridiculous. I slept 3 hours a night most nights. So I thought by curing that, by tackling that, it'll have a positive effect on my mental health. So I went on melatonin supplements. I was using like CBD oil to help me sleep and like all these things. I tried to go the natural route. I changed my diet. So I was hoping that would have positive effects. But yeah, looking back, it's definitely the slower approach, and you have to be more patient with that. But yeah, it's very real. The mental health side of it was probably the hardest side, because there's so much uncertainty related to long COVID, because it's not a quick fix. I mean, like Dr. Loebscher said with you as well, he had hoped you would respond quicker and you didn't. And I feel that's with most cases. Like, my blood clots were decreasing or getting less after I had gone on the treatment, but then suddenly they came back. And at the end of the day, I sat with it for a year and a half. Anyway, so yeah, I think the mental thing is probably the worst thing about it, because it's something that's so out of your control. And that's something that I guess for me, the biggest journey that I had to go on through in the last 2 years was to get to a point where I could release the outcome, be severed from the outcome in a sense, and to be mindful of what am I doing in the present. And I don't know if that makes sense, but I couldn't put my hope in the outcome because there was so much uncertainty. And I think that broke me was, you would hope for something and then a setback comes along and you floored for weeks. And then you just feel so like paralyzed almost. And then, so I think I just got to a point where I had to realize I had to release the outcome. I had to be present. And I started focusing more on, taking it day by day, resting well, being patient with myself, being kind to myself, being kind towards others who didn't have an understanding of what I was going through, having patience with them, pulling them in, learning to press into community, learning to do stuff that's life-giving to me, setting healthy boundaries in place, all these things that we read about that's really good for yourself to operate as a healthy human being in a holistic way. Yeah, so I think looking back, I can be thankful for the positive changes that it brought in my life, but it definitely came out of a place of a lot of suffering and long suffering. It took me a year and a half or a year to like learn really hard lessons and to slow down in life and to be mindful, I guess. I don't know if that answers your question. I went on such a tangent now, but yeah, I think that's just been some of my process that I've been working through, and even people struggling with it. Like, I've had such cool conversations. I mean, I met you through it. I met Ruan, who's such a dear friend, and I have so much respect, for how he's handled it. But I think the biggest thing for me was to realize that suffering produces good fruits in your life. Suffering builds resilience, it builds compassion, it builds patience, it changes your worldview. And I think when I realized that, I could fully lean into it. And it's beautiful actually what can come out of it.
I love what you just shared. That's incredible. I can totally relate to that. Also, for those who don't know, I'm also a believer. So we know each other through, I guess, church circles, Ruan being my community group leader. But I've also battled with that tension just in a spiritual sense. And I guess even someone who's not a Christian would struggle with, why does God allow suffering? Why has this happened to me? And I've really wrestled with that a lot. Also experiencing depression since my early 20s. So I totally relate to that pondering. But I can say I agree with you in the fact that suffering does create a perspective shift in your mind. I view life differently now. I view relationships, community, friendships, family, like purpose. I view that all so much more differently. I don't see money and material things as I used to see them, like I'd love to earn a bigger salary. I'd love to own the latest Audi or the latest MacBook or whatever, but I don't. And it's okay. It's like, it's not the be all end all for me, and so I really relate to that. I wanted to ask, in terms of right now, how are you doing now, and do you feel like you're there, like you're 100%? Are you 70%, 80%? And what are some of the supplements or things that you did to get to this point after finishing treatment with Yaku?
I would say that I'm probably at 75% or somewhere between 70 and 75%. Yeah, I think I'll be hopeful and say that's where I'm at. I still struggle with with a lot of chest pain. So the main thing with long COVID, or let's say the main thing, but it's obviously that your body has got always under a lot of inflammation for a long period of time, which is super dangerous to your body. So I still have a lot of inflammation in my body, and it's now 2 years later, almost 2.5 years later. So that's hard. I definitely I struggle to recover after exercise, but it's amazing because I get to exercise again. I'm running again. I'm like running quite avidly, like every week. I'm running in the mountains or on the trails here in Stellies. So that's something that I'm super thankful for, but it takes me really long to recover. So I saw another doctor last year, an amazing doctor, Dr. Marius Ruiz. He's here in the Western Cape as well. And he focused on my gut. So long COVID or COVID affects you on a mitochondrial level, a neurological level, and then, with the blood. And obviously with Dr. Loubser, his main focus is on the blood and the blood clotting, which is amazing research that they've done. But I think I just last year, so it was amazing. I got to run a half marathon last year, which was amazing. I just set this goal, like I was in the middle of suffering with long COVID. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to run 21Ks next year. And I was floored after that. I mean, I think that was probably not the wisest thing to do, but I knew that I had done tests and stuff before that. So I knew I wasn't at risk of getting a blood clot or anything during the race. So that's fine. I went to see doctors and it was fine. But anyway, so I did that. It floored me. My spasms came back, my cramps came back, my brain fog, everything. So I went to Dr. Ruiz. He focuses a lot on gut health and autoimmune diseases and stuff. And a lot of people have said that a lot of the symptoms are quite similar to some autoimmune diseases. So I went to see him and he did a lot of tests and tested, we did a lot of heart tests and lung tests, all these things. And he just said, okay, he's going to zoom in on my gut and he's going to focus on healing my gut because, he's quite optimistic and a firm believer that if you heal the gut, you can heal so many things in your body because the gut affects your brain, it affects your whole being in a sense. So that was quite cool. I saw him in August last year. And I went on a super strict, for 3 months, my lifestyle drastically changed where I drank the supplements. I actually have a list of it here at the back because I'm still on some of it. But the main thing was I had to go on vitamin B12 supplements, vitamin D, iron, probiotics. And he had a big focus on restoring my gut lining. And then I just went on a very high anti-inflammatory diet, and my diet was filled with antioxidants as well. So cut out gluten, cut out lactose. So I think similar to you, lactose intolerant, gluten intolerant. So I cut out all of that. I incorporated fasting. There's a lot of research that's been done around fasting and the effects of that. So I incorporated that. I followed it quite strictly, and I had the privilege, some of my friends did it with me, my housemates. So I lived with 3 friends last year. They did it with me, which was such a cool support. And I started feeling, obviously you feel a change in your body, whether it heals long COVID or not. If you are, if you're eating all the good stuff and fasting, you're going to feel a positive change. So my lifestyle now, this is, almost a year later. And I would say that generally I follow that. I'm not religious about it. So I definitely will enjoy a burger out with friends if I go out, but I can feel the effects of that on my body. But it definitely, by healing my gut, I definitely got less cramps, I don't get spasms anymore, which is amazing because that was a part of my daily routine. The last spasm that I had was in March when I was driving to Cape Town on the highway, but I had a friend next to me, so she could hold the steering wheel for me because my arms just went into spasms. But that was the last time that I had it. My brain fog has definitely cleared up. I still have down days. There are definitely still days where I really struggle to work, and I definitely take afternoon naps often. By the time I hit 2 o'clock, I'm in a massive slump. Then I'll just take a quick nap, return to work. So that's why I'm saying 75%. I'm definitely not back at 100% capacity. Specifically with brain, like on a neurological level, or I still struggle with concentration, memory loss, but not as bad. It's not as bad as it used to be. And the fact that I can exercise 4 times a week, 5 times a week, it's the biggest gift, and that fuels me. You know, that's what I sort of cling to. I'll deal with the slow recovery and the cramps, but if I get to run, and yeah, I think that was one of the things that's essential in my life. Like I need to hike and exercise, and so I think mentally it's got a positive, like the positive effect mentally outweighs the negative physical symptoms, if that makes sense. Yeah. But sorry, just to like maybe summarize or just to conclude what I just said, I think it was amazing. I read a lot of books about like The Body Holds the Score, or When the Body Says No by Dr. Gabriel Maté, like a lot of books. And I mean, there can be a lot of controversial comments or about it. I've watched a lot of really cool podcasts or videos on fasting, and those things work. And I think it's amazing how your gut, by healing the gut, it can have such a positive effect on your body. So yeah, I'm definitely like happy where I'm at the moment.
I can say on that note, I'm actually on a similar train. Only the last couple of weeks, I've seen a new doctor who still wants to remain anonymous on my platform, but he's helping a lot of people with vaccine injuries and dealing with a lot of long COVID patients as well. And he also subscribes to the gut health regime of fix your gut, because so much of your immune system is there. And if you're eating all the sugar and lactose and all the stuff that you're intolerant to, you're causing damage. You're also feeding bad microbiomes or bacteria in your gut, and that's just also causing leaky gut issues that can basically the bacteria can end up in your bloodstream. And I totally relate to feeling like my body is just inflamed. There's inflammation. There's just like my body shuts down and I need to crash for a day or two. So I think there's still elements of this theory of viral reservoir. Like there's still spike proteins in the body, in the gut lining, in your tissues, your blood. And I think I don't know enough about it yet, but I'm on that journey. Also wanting to look at, I don't know if you've heard of nattokinase or serrapeptase. Those are those enzymes that people are taking instead of blood thinning medication to basically get rid of these amyloid fibrin clots, but also to bind to spike protein and help reduce that damage in your body. But those are things I'm looking at. But I totally agree with you on the probiotics and healing your gut. Yeah, so I'm hoping to share a bit more of an update when I have capacity to make another video. As you know, it takes a lot out of you just trying to make it to work and just to have a balance, with family, friends, your partner in life and everything. But yeah, I think that's an amazing amount of content. And just thank you so much for being so open and honest, Surita. I wanted to ask in closing what you would say to someone who's in a similar boat, or maybe picture yourself a year ago. What would you say to someone on a dark day, on a day where they are struggling to have hope and believe that they can get better? Yeah, and that's not the end.
Yeah, I think I've maybe said, or I'm going to repeat myself probably now, because I've sort of dropped some motivational sayings throughout this video. But yeah, I guess one of the biggest things that I feel I had to learn was to be patient with yourself, to have grace for yourself. If you're having a bad day, it's okay. Have the kindness towards yourself to then take it slow, just stay in bed for the whole day, because it's not permanent, it's only temporary. So that was the one thing, because I think there's a lot of like guilt and feelings of worthlessness and inadequacy, if you don't feel capable to do things. So that's the first thing. It's like, it's okay to slow down. It's okay to struggle, and then to give your body time to feel that. But then at the same time, I think, it is really important for our minds. It's really important to have vision and to be positive and to have something that you cling to. So for me, it's, I know that in Jeremiah 29 verse 11 in the Bible, it says that God has given me a hope and a future. So whether that future looks differently than what I thought it would look like, I know that it's a hopeful future. Everyone has been created with a purpose. Everyone has been given the opportunity to a future. And yeah, I would say, like, just embrace that, lean into it, and trust that you will get better. And don't give up. I think we shouldn't camp in our suffering. We shouldn't set up a tent and just decide that we're going to stay in this pit of suffering. I think it's good to be present in the suffering, but then to know that you are working towards something greater. And at the end of suffering, there's character that's been built, there's new perspective, and all these things. So we should never give up, even if we don't know what we're working towards. We know that, there is hope, and our hope is alive and well. Oh, that sounds so cliche. So maybe you should cut that, Chris. Like, maybe. I think the main thing is
I think that's beautiful. I think it's great. Yeah. No, people. I think people love to see people. Sorry, people love to see the genuine side of people, and I love that as well. And I think people really relate to that. I loved what you said about not camping in it. I think even from my own experience, when you're feeling depressed and you're like, it's your lowest day, it's easy to think, I am this. This is my identity, like, forever. But it's not. And that's something I'm still wanting to chat to other people, and specifically Rowan, about, is how do you not let long COVID or a chronic disease become your identity, because it's not. It's like you've only experienced this out of maybe, so we've had it maybe 2-3 years out of our 30-year lifespan. I don't know. You I think you're mid-20s or early 20s.
29.
Okay. So I didn't dig myself a hole there, but it's an amazing thought not to. I love that, not camping in it and not setting up a tent and saying this is now the rest of my life, because it's not. But yeah, So any other thoughts before we end? Yeah,
I would actually just like to add. The other thing is definitely to press into community, I want to say. So whether that's your family, whether that's friends, whether, I don't know, it's a running club or a church community or an art community, lean into community. Because I think with, suffering usually isolates people. I think for me, I know I isolated myself. And the biggest gift that we have is people around us. And I've worked in a lot of, as part of my job with a nonprofit, you work in disaster relief. I've worked at I've had amazing opportunities in my life to work in areas that's been affected by earthquakes, and will be the second responders. And what I've seen time and time again is the power of community and how people lean into each other in those times, and how it's because of the people around them that they are able to bounce back. It's because of the people around them that they're able to remain, to hold on to their humanity, to hold on to their empathy, their compassion, their kindness, even in the midst of suffering. And I think that's, our biggest, I don't know, that's definitely something that I regret if I look back at the way that I did things. But it's something that I also had to learn and grow in. But is you withhold yourself from such a blessing and a gift if you isolate yourself in times of suffering, where there's the opportunity for people around you to come in, to carry you, to support you, to love on you, to even just sit. The one day I remember I told my mom, my dad, I was like, sit down, don't say anything. Please let me just cry and vent. And I sat there and I vented and I cried. And it was the first time where someone just sat and heard me and listened to me. And I said, I don't want advice. I just want a hug, and I want someone to hear me out. And that's the power of community. That's the power of having people around you. And after that, cool, I cried it out and I felt better and I had hope to move forward. But that's probably my biggest advice, is to press into community. And when it's going really bad, when you're lying in your bed, I think it's helpful to speak positive things over yourself as well. You know, there's so much power in even what we speak, and to say that I'm going to get through this. I'm going to be okay. For me, it was, I am going to be able to run in the mountains on trails again one day. I am going to be able to travel the world again. And those things, you know, you're building a belief system in your mind that's helping you cling onto something. So I think that's maybe that's what I would want to leave with all your listeners today.
Amazing. Thank you, Surita. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I think we've delved a lot into, vaccines, infection, suffering, faith, treatments, medication, exercise, all of that. And I wish the best for you for the year ahead. And we'll definitely be in touch just to check in and, see how your symptoms are going. And I'll share anything if I find anything useful gut health related, because I'm also starting that journey now. The doctor wants me to do 3 months of a carnivore diet, which I am dreading. Like, it's going to be so hard.
Hey.
Today is like my first day, sort of. So it's been really tough. I'm like missing milk and cheese and, just carbs. Like, I can't just go eat like even gluten-free bread or pasta. I can't touch, for like, it's going to be hard. But anyways, thank you for your time again. And thoughts and prayers with you. And thanks for listening if you guys were tuning into the conversation this evening. Thank you, Surita.
Thanks so much, Chris. You're such a legend for just like creating this platform as well. Thank you so much for how you're driving it. And all the best for your carnivore diet. I'm excited to hear how it goes.
I'm not excited. It's going to be so hard, yeah. Cool. Thanks, Surita.
I back you, Chris. Bye.